If I had just 59 seconds to talk to everybody age 50 and older, here's what I would say. The societal norm of us retiring at 65 is stealing from us much of the youth of our senior years. Yes, it's normal to retire at 65, but unfortunately, at age 60, most of us have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time remaining. That's not a lot of time. And unfortunately, the World Health Organization tells us that the average American loses our health. We have a cancer diagnosis, we have a stroke, we have a heart attack, whatever it is, we lose our health at just 65.1 years old. That's just 13 months after 65. And I want to see all of us enjoy and squeeze all the juice out of the youth of our senior years. Yet, most of us cruise through our 50s and our early 60s on autopilot. It's a great time in our life. After working 20, 30, 40 years, our jobs tend to be fairly easy for us. We have a lot of contacts. We can make things happen relatively simply. And so that's an easy period of time, and we're making a lot of money. But if you know you already have enough money to retire, and that's critically important, it's important to ask yourself, what are you gaining by trading off having your freedom to enjoy your healthiest, most active years? The reality is once we turn 65, once we turn 67, it's a lot harder to do some of these trips, some of these adventures that we want to do. Recently, I climbed a volcano in Guatemala, and I'm 60 years old, but I have to say, I thought to myself, I don't know if in 10 years I could do this hike. And it's really the first time in my life that I came up against a physical limitation. I didn't even think, is this something that I can do? Because I've always been able to do it. So I caution you to be thinking about that as well. So how do you know if you have enough money to retire? When I'm a retired financial advisor. I worked as a financial advisor for 20 years. I helped hundreds of people transition into retirement. And, the gold standard to know, first off, it depends on your expenses. It depends on what retirement looks like to you. Many people think of financial advisors' first question when they ask, do I have enough money to retire? Many people think the first question I'm going to ask is, how much money do you have? That's not my first question. It's the second or third question. But my first question is, what does retirement look like to you? What do you want to do? Now, I worked as a financial advisor in outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, and there's the mountains nearby. I had a lot of clients that what they enjoyed doing was going for hikes in the mountains or mountain bike riding or skiing. Um, and those today can be inexpensive activities. And if that's how people want to spend their time outdoors, doing things like that, or in other parts of the country, if they like gardening or road cycling or whatever it is, those can be inexpensive things to do. So you may not need as much money as you think. So the gold standard is to work with a financial advisor. Typically, financial advisors charge about 1% a year of the assets that they're managing. And I think that's money well spent, right? 10% mistake, which is super easy for any of us to do, pays to have a professional by your side for 10 years. But if you're not going to use a financial advisor, I urge you to not use Google Sheets, to not use Excel sheets, but use software that's designed for you so you don't forget things. For instance, one of the biggest expenses for retirees that I often see left off of their budget is taxes. And how you plan for taxes can have a significant impact on how much money you pay over your lifetime on taxes. Another one is healthcare costs. Even with Medicare, Fidelity tells us the average American from the time they're 65 until the time they pass can needs to plan on at least $155,000 for costs that aren't covered by Medicare or the cost of Medicare. Again, another, for instance, with traditional Medicare, For Part B, there's a 20% copay that has no cap. Now, you can buy insurance. It's called Medigap to help you with that, but that can get expensive depending on what medical condition you have later in life. If you have a heart attack and you have a $500,000 bill, that can add up very quickly. So having software that's designed to help you make sure you're not forgetting things like that is important. The software I like is called Bolden. You can sign up. It used to be called New Retirement. You can sign up for Bolden in the link in the description for this video. I am an affiliate. This video is not sponsored by them, but a small piece of what you pay. It's very affordable. As I record this, it's $120 a year. So taking full advantage of the youth of our senior years is so critical. But the challenge is the transition into this unknown life, into this life in retirement. It can be very scary. It was scary for me. I just retired myself about 9 months ago. It's scary to give up our paycheck. It's scary to think, how am I going to spend 168 hours a week? The reality is when we're working, 80 hours, and not 80 hours, but 40 hours a week is spoken for by work, and then probably at least another 10 hours getting ready for work, commuting back and forth to work, etc. So the reality is we only have a couple of hours each weekday to figure out what we're going to spend our time on. And by the time we take care of our kids or get dinner cooked and working out, we really don't have that much time that we need to think about how do I want to spend this time. So the thought of 168 hours a week can be daunting. That transition into this unknown life is similar to the transition when we left our parents' home. And for many of us, that was a scary transition, whether you went to trade school or you got a full-time job or you went to college, right? Leaving the warmth and comfort of our parents' home and the protection of our parents was a scary thing. But how many of us, after 1 year or 2 years living away from home, how many of us said, boy, I can barely wait to live full-time with my parents again? Some of us did, and that's fine. I'm not making a knock against that. But most of us said, I like this new life. And one of the great joys of being a financial advisor is I got to see people make that leap. I saw that it was normal to be scared of making that transition, of making that leap. But I also saw a year later or 2 years later, 75, 80% plus of my clients were thrilled that they made that transition. And the reality is, unless we're going to work until the day that we die, at some point, we need to make that transition. So if you have enough money to retire, why not make that transition earlier? I want to go back to that point about 168 hours. Many people think they need to find their next purpose, their next passion that's going to take up the 40 hours a week that their job did. And in my case, and in many of my clients' cases, as long as you have something that you're passionate about, that gives you fulfillment, that takes up 10 to 20 hours a week, I think that's fine as a place to start. You may later say, I want something 40 hours a week that does that. And you'll be able to build on that, but you don't let the 168 hours be daunting. If you enjoyed this video, the YouTube algorithm says this is the next video of mine specifically for you that you should watch next. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.